likely all of those God of War videos that you've seen in the last couple of years, and that's why you're watching it, or the person that talked in his radio voice to discuss Doom and the narratives behind that. So today, I want to try something a little bit different. I don't do a lot of live streams or looks in this sort of way. So this is one of the first attempts. So please, have some patience because I am doing my best with the framework that we have here. And today, I wanted to go over the state of play that just happened from Sony a little while ago. I wasn't able to get this all set up exactly live for the moment that it happened, so I did see, I think, the first 20 minutes I have set up here, and I can go over a little bit of what was discussed there, but then there's new gameplay and a complete new analysis of what we can see in The Last of Us 2. So I am going to go over that. We'll watch it. And then I want to take a little bit of time for anyone that cares, I certainly do, to discuss The Last of Us 2 in its entirety. Because it is, I think, one of these games that has some negativity associated with it, especially considering the recent stories from Naughty Dog and what's going on there. So I really do want to talk about that. It's an interesting game. I'm not bitter at all that everyone else in Canada seemingly got a review code before me. I'm completely cool with that and all smiles. No, I'm deeply upset with that. But let's start with what we learned so far in The Last of Us 2 State of Play. So in the first 20 minutes or so, giving you a brief synopsis, we've learned that this is set years after Last of Us 1. If you recall, obvious spoilers, at the end of The Last of Us, Joel killed everyone instead of leaving Ellie to create a cure for the disease that was ravaging this new apocalyptic world. And originally left her with the Fireflies, saved her, and they went out on their journey. Since that time, it's a couple years later, Ellie is now 19 years old. She's living in a community in Jackson, Wyoming, and that's most of the videos we saw previously, where she seems to be alive and happy and, excited about her exciting new life, being very much a lesbian and enjoying that fact, which is great. And unfortunately, everything goes awry, and she is now put on a quest for vengeance. In that quest, now, The Last of Us 2, she discovers a couple new factions, as we learned about today. Again, I'm not entirely certain if this is all new information, but I haven't heard of it before, so it is new to me. We learned about two factions. One, the Washington Liberation Front, a group that was protesting the occupation by the military when the outbreak happened, that since actually took over Seattle and areas of Seattle, gaining the military weaponry that was there. And their basic hunt, kill, capture group, from what we saw in the trailer today, they find someone, they either kill them or try to indoctrinate them. Pretty simple. I will notice that seemingly there are many, many similarities to the narrative structure of Days Gone, another PlayStation exclusive, to Last of Us 2 that we learned today. One of the biggest ones was the other faction, the Seraphites or Scars. If you're familiar with Days Gone, they're basically the Rippers. Even to the fact that they cut their faces to indicate they're part of this faction. There seems to be some religiosity associated with what they're doing. So they, in the trailer that we saw, are kind of the kooky religious freaks. I think at one point the character says, clip her wings, and then hits her in the arm with a hammer. Clipping her wings sort of thing. So these are the different factions that Ellie is going to be killing or working with. We didn't get a sense of how much cooperation there will be. If you do get any sort of, narrative meta choices, we're not really aware of that so far with what we saw. But it looks interesting, we'll say at that point. So right now, there is brand new footage. Again, Andy Borkowski here, VGS. If you do happen to click on this, the guy that tries to make a lot of lore videos on video games. Right now, let's take a look at, I wasn't able to see this, I saw everything before this, the new, I think it's 8, 9, 10 minutes, yeah, about that long, 10 minutes of new footage for The Last of Us 2. If there are any technical problems, please tell me, because I am so new to this that it is embarrassing. So let's begin. Okay. I think the audio is working. I'm still here. There's Ellie. I'm pretty big. Maybe I'll make myself a little smaller for y'all, just so that we can watch this. Alright, let's watch.
Did you find her yet?
Shit. Escape while no one was looking. We're searching the area, just in case she's still around.
Oh, a little bit of lag in there.
Isaac's not happy about it.
No shit.
Interesting.
Escape. What the fuck are they talking about?
So these are examples of narratives being told by the performance around it, the narratives in the world, which I think The Last of Us 2 and Last of Us franchise did a really, really good job of. So we have some very exciting swimming. I'm pretty sure this is going to get incredibly violent very quickly. I think the game, again, is only a couple of weeks out, which is strange to think about. Okay. So now Ellie is infiltrating this place, I think, to try to save someone they mentioned. Okay. Let's see exactly how bloody this is going to be. Let's take a look
Don't
here.
make a fucking sound. Hands up. Do you know a girl named Nora?
Sure, yeah.
Oh.
Where is she?
In the hospital.
Where in the hospital?
Yeah, they're clearing out the upper floors. She's somewhere in there.
It's a little... Let me try to fix this a bit, because I think the audio is a little...
They're clearing out the upper floors. She's somewhere in there.
Yeah, so the audio is way off. Let me try to fix this moment. Oh, shit! I saw that. Oh, god damn. It's not mixed with the audio, but god damn, that's upsetting. Okay, hold on.
Hands up. Do you know a girl named
Our audio is entirely not working, so I'm really happy about that, folks, that we're able to do this, this lookup in this way.
Journey.
Well, it seems to be working here, so let me...
We can't wait for you to experience it all for yourself on June 19th.
Give me 1 second, folks.
Until then, here's an extended sequence of never-before-seen gameplay.
They're clearing out the upper floors. She's somewhere in there.
It looks like she was playing a Vita, which is also pretty funny. Down there on the ground. Now, how are you not going to look at it right now? Come on now. Okay, so we saw a brutal murder of a young woman.
Good. I got my girl waiting for him for Bob.
You shit me? They put you with Joe again?
upstairs?
Hey, we get the job done.
Yeah, again, this is an
bet you
attempt
do.
to build the narrative,
this is not
the
fair.
idea that these characters
telling you,
have
man. Data
internal
soldier. Makes
lives.
these shifts
So when you
so
kill
much
them,
easier.
there's you know, a little more impact.
Sure. I'll keep that in mind.
Fuck. Sounds like
Okay, this is
scars
good to see this again. Classic banking
It's our guys
silencers.
executing those
I wonder if they're going to go for a complete
Did you hear why we're all getting called up to the fob?
silence way of doing
I heard
this.
that Isaac wants us to retake all of downtown.
I heard
Yeah,
we
so
might
the
get
audio
to
is
fight
off
them.
on this, which
No
makes
way.
this a little
Not
difficult
after
to
what went
watch.
down last time. Even Isaac isn't that crazy.
That's what I heard.
Alright, is she going to do some killing here?
Shut up.
All right, calm down.
Alright, I gotta try to fix this because this is not something that we should have like this. Hold on momentarily here. Let me try to fix this 1 second. I think it
Data
was...
soldier.
It makes these shifts so much easier.
So we'll see if this works a little bit easier, folks. Sorry
Keep
about that
in
again.
mind.
Let's get back to it.
Fuck. Sounds like scars are getting closer.
Okay. So we're hearing that the
guys execute
WLF.
Did you hear why we're all getting
There we go. All right, audio's
I
back.
heard that Isaac wants us
The
to retake all
WLF
of
and
downtown.
the Scars are fighting, and you
might
seem
take
to
the
be in the
fight for
middle of this war.
No way. Not after what
Oh,
went down
classic.
last
Again,
time.
I love any game that you can
Even
hold
Isaac
a
isn't that
button
crazy.
and it will highlight things around you.
what I
Like if you
heard.
have any sort of major game that doesn't have that, I'm, miss me with that shit. All right.
Shut up.
See.
All right, calm down.
That's pretty cool. Oh! See, again, we learned all about this guy, that he was, again, dating someone that was working here, and we just killed her. Oh! The character's name's Charlotte, which is something a lot of other games wouldn't include. Alright, let's see. Making a molly. If anyone has played the Last of Us 1 multiplayer, getting that molly is so important. Okay, so at this point, they found Ellie. And there's a dog. I don't remember dogs in the first game. No! Oh! Oh, we heard the dog screaming death! And the person's crying! Okay. I'm good with you stabbing a man in the larynx and watching the blood come out, but having a dog die in midst flames is maybe a line that I would hold. Okay, we're going that classic bow. So I don't see any kind of like major alarm that's gone off. She's been seen by a couple people, and they're not all converging on her position, still trying to go stealthy. But they do know that something's up.
Just like that.
Man. The larynx noises, I don't imagine what kind of work went into that. Like, I'm starting to feel a little nauseous, honestly. Alright, classic. They've stuck with the same sort of setup that we've seen before. Oh! He's bold! And you shot him in the bold
I'll go
spot!
check it out. I got you covered.
Holy shit!
Alright, let's look. Using them all. Oh, classic. Yeah, strike.
Stop her now!
Interesting. If anyone's familiar again with the multiplayer, that is one of the classic moves. Is to throw smoke and then get in for the insta-kill.
I found her!
It seems like the game has taken a lot of cues from that multiplayer experience, because the single player I remember being a lot more limited. Going through while you're getting shot, bad idea. Kind of abandoned the whole multiplayer aspect, or the stealthy aspect at this point. Cool. Again, that's to hide loading screens, I think, moments like
Find
that.
another way off.
So one chapter is done. I don't know if anyone who has played The Last of Us, I don't think anyone would play the system like that, you know? Like, I think we'd all take our time, find the collectibles, try and do a stealthy run. I don't see it as being quite this cinematic. I don't know about you guys, but that is not how I play. I'm holding down that button to try to find everything around me. Oh, damn, what's this? Yeah, we'll get flagged for this. We got Ice Cube. Some more narrative tidbits.
Maybe if you posted more guards, Abby would still be herself.
The fuck was Abby here?
I'm not stupid.
Oh,
You're
Abby.
gonna tell us where she went.
No, that's
When
not the
Isaac
person
talks to us about
from the
this-
first
I'm getting
one.
tired of this.
Nora.
Okay, so that's Nora. who
I'm
we're
not
looking
going down for her, man.
So it is, the following camera is something that the first game did a really, really great job of. So it does kind of feel like God of War does this really well too. They don't do a lot of cuts. They let the camera follow you and not have a change of perspective, which adds to that cinematic flair so much. All right, is this cutscene or interactive? Okay, yes, this is cutscene.
Put that shit down.
A little bit Uncanny Valley.
You remember me?
Just with their faces. Just a little bit.
Yeah. You remember me.
Okay, so that is all of the new gameplay that we got to see coming out soon. Yada, yada, yada. Make my face a little bigger. Sorry, folks, you got to see more of it. Let's hear that dog get horribly murdered again. That was horrendous. All right, let's see if we can find that. No, it's before that. Yeah, so they made a Molotov. I don't remember dogs in the first one. Jesus Christ. So once more on that, she finds a dog. Now turn up your volume, folks, because goddamn. Jesus. God damn. Once more. Ah! That was very masculine of me. And I think another moment that we kind of missed because the audio was messing up. So I'm going to maybe freeze on that just so that I can talk for a second of some of the thoughts I'm having about this. Okay, so again, just a little bit more. Just again, this is all to make a point. But yeah, so a lot of what we've seen of The Last of Us 2 has been about this idea of creating a story about hate. That's what Neil Druckmann said. That The Last of Us 1 was about family, exploration, and love, and this iteration, part 2, is about hate. And from the moments that we've seen so far in this gameplay, ratcheting up that violence, whether it is trying to convey narrative like you would in Blood Meridian or something like that, a narrative of that nature, always requires ramping up. And we just saw this woman who was playing a video game moments before get stabbed in the throat and have blood gushing out, to a dog being burned alive and yelping as it happens. This ratcheting up of the violence in the game in order to convey narrative, I think, is one of the weakest ways to provide nuance of characters. Like, what we saw here that is interesting to me isn't the fact that it's violent, that it's extremely violent. Like, I think that's something that may be a selling factor, and maybe they did have to amp that up for, purchasing and finding purchase in this great video game economy. But the way that violence was depicted here really felt a little bit hollow because it is so gratuitous and it's not aware of it. Like a lot of games, like I'm thinking of Doom in particular, does an excellent job of using the gratuity of violence to convey a tone. And I think Last of Us 2, from what we've seen so far, again, very, very early on, I'm not spiteful that I don't have a review copy yet, obviously. It seems to me that this idea of hate and a story being told in this way, the way that we've seen that being portrayed is through violence. And I think there are much better ways to show a story of hate than protracted violence. Like, video games have shown violence very well for a very, very long time. Things that I did really like that I want to go over again were some of the hints at the narratives being told. So, like, these moments here, I think, are really cool.
Good. I got my girl waiting for him for Bob.
So these are random soldiers that have names, we're
Hey,
learning
we got
that
the job done.
this character
I bet you do.
does a really great job of
I'm
staying
telling you,
within their.
Data
What am I
soldier
saying?
makes these
I was
shifts
listening to
so
what they're
much
saying.
easier.
That these characters have loved ones. That these characters have people that they care about. And it kind of reminds me of the really cheesy and schmaltzy earlier Hitman games, where it's kind of like, yeah, you know, let's read little notes that depict that these characters have a background to try to give you some impact. And I hope that this doesn't happen always, repeatedly, that we just have one person coming out and again saying like, oh man, I loved Charlotte. She was so cool. You know, I wish she was here with me. She seems like the coolest person ever. Just to give weight to violence like this. You know, like, from what I've seen so far, as interesting as this does seem and how cool that it does seem, I really want people to hammer down what seems cool about it, what seems interesting. They seem to be telling stories in some kind of interesting ways, but if it's used just as a vehicle for violence in this sort of way, that to me isn't challenging. That to me is something that video games have been doing for a really, really long time and really, really well. Like, how many people do we think Ellie is going to kill? Is this the third person that she's killed, or is this the 400th person that she's killed? And the weight of death in these games, from what we've seen so far in The Last of Us, I think really takes away from that story of hate. And someone in the comments is mentioning that God of War does it better. And I think that is very, very astute. And I just want to show really quickly one little clip that I was thinking of. It might even be my video because I was fortunate enough to have that. God of War Atris first kill. Yeah, so it is my video, hilariously. So the weight of, make sure you check it out, subscribe, VGS. The difference between the weight of this, and I understand
What if they change like the others?
they're in different
We'll have to
scenarios.
keep them alive. Strip off their
But
meat.
let's go to it. So they
This
fight,
fight is mine alone.
and I'll show it to you here. I'll try not to interrupt.
Boy,
So let's watch. I hope I don't fuck this up.
Father, help me!
Atreus! Boy,
All right, let's watch. Let's watch. Okay, so again, this is the moments of power here in these sort of ways.
close your heart.
Freeze it on that base. So what I just shown everyone was an example of giving weight to the violence. Last of Us, what we saw in these trailers, gives weight by having characters talk about their rich internal lives and the backstories behind it. I understand it's a little bit different. This is a character that hasn't seen death before, that hasn't done these sort of things, although he is the child of Kratos, who's killed everything maybe in existence. So I understand there is a distinction, but I really think that what we've seen in The Last of Us isn't trying to give weight to violence. And for me, that creates a story that ironically makes the violence seem not very cool. Like it makes the violence seem like something that is gratuitous and not in a fun way. It does, and I hate to say it, it does come off as someone that thinks they're too smart by a half, Neil Druckmann has talked a lot about the complexity of storytelling and what The Last of Us is about. And I'm worried that his great success in the previous games has caused him, like a lot of auteurs, to go deep inside his own butthole and not really see the forest for the trees. I get that this was not needed. I'm not sure why I did this here. But yeah, not really see the forest for the trees and recognize that the most violent and the most gratuitous and the most intense things you can make in a video game don't necessarily mean it is the best or the most interesting or the most compelling. It just, everything we've seen of The Last of Us so far has been one or two notes. So let's go back to The Last of Us if we can find it here. Think about what we just saw there. And let's just compare it to... Is it going to let me?
Shut up. All right, calm down.
Oh, probably this is a good example. So if you're just joining us, Andy Borkowski, VGS, looking at the new footage from The Last of Us Part 2. Let's go over this one more time. This is Ellie. This one was just playing. It looked like Hotline Miami.
Hands up.
On her Vita.
Who is he?
Do you know a girl named Nora?
Sure, yeah.
Where is she?
In the hospital.
Where in the hospital?
Yeah, they're clearing out the upper floors. She's somewhere in there.
So they fight a little bit. Right in the throat. Oh, fuck.
That was dumb.
So at this point, she has killed, from the first game to the second game, hundreds and hundreds of people. The weight of this one death, for me, is inconsequential. Like, I don't give a shit that this woman just died. The only reason we care even a little bit is because of the visceral blood spurting throughout the throat. So I am positive that in The Last of Us Part 2, they're going to do things like people being tortured, dogs dying, which we already saw, and allusions to, if not depicting, threats of rape and rape against Ellie. And, like, that's just shitty storytelling. Like, that's just weak. That's not interesting. That doesn't make Ellie seem, brooding and an intense character. It just makes the story seem like it's written without someone that has real pathos. Like, it's cool that this person died in such a way and it was so intense. It's cool. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, I get it. It's cool. But it doesn't make me think the narrative beats that I believe this story is trying to tell. So that's my biggest fear at this point. That Neil Druckmann has gone deep up his own ass. Again, I'm bringing this back up here. And supports at Naughty Dog, unfortunately, as you probably heard, labor practices that are pretty shitty to a lot of people that just want to make a living. He seems like an auteur that just wants everything to be perfect and doesn't realize that making games is a job and it should be treated as such. And from what I've seen so far, I don't seem to be very impressed by this idea of hate being the story of Last of Us Part 2. I could be completely wrong. I could be the one that's going deep up my own ass in this way and looking into things that aren't there. But based on what I've heard so far from the narrative designer and people discussing the narrative beats in this game, it seems like the use of gratuitous violence will be the path that this game takes, and taking it super seriously. Like, that's a different thing. If we, in every other moment in this game, were violent and were meant to feel good about the violence, then that's one thing. I don't think The Last of Us Part 2 knows how they want we to feel when we kill someone like this. Like, honestly, what do they think the characters should feel when we do, let me find the right moment, when we do this? It's coming up. Hopefully I don't fuck this up. So there's a little doggy searching for you. Like, what do they think we're supposed to feel about that. That it's indicative of how intense a situation this is right now. What Ellie is willing to do to get out of. I made a fart with noise with my hands. That's what happened. What Ellie is willing to do to get out of the situation and find revenge. I get that, but I think this is going to happen like dozens and dozens of times. There isn't a vulnerability to it. The great thing about The Last of Us was we had one character, Joel, that represented that violence, that he was wanting to redeem himself for the violence that he committed for most of his life through the avatar of Ellie. This time around, we don't have that dichotomy. So I hate to use it, but there is that, it's disgusting to say, but that ludonarrative dissonance between what we're doing as a character and the narratives and motivations that we seem to have. Like, I don't know about you, but it's not fun to be this viscerally violent and be made to feel bad about it again and again and again and again and again. When Atreus in God of War, a video I just showed a couple minutes ago, killed his first person, ironically, considering he's the son of Kratos in God of War, there was a weight to that, and it informed the character. I don't see that happening here, and a lot of the gameplay looks really, really fun. Like, let's go over this again. Like, there is so much weight to the actual actions that you're putting in here. Like, I'm so excited just about navigating through this living world. And using it in this way and moving back and forth is exciting and interesting, but I think there's a big dissonance between what this game is trying to make us feel by doing this. And it obviously is. Like, I'm not just looking into it. Like, obviously, this is a game wherein there is heavy narrative weight. Like, the meta-narrative is right in our faces. They want us to know that this represents something. Neil Druckmann wants us to feel something. And I'm worried that he thinks that having violence be never-ending, have no weight for it, and just mean that it just means that you're brooding and intense. And I don't feel that way. I really think that it could be one of the biggest downfalls of The Last of Us Part 2. I do think that there are enough reviewers that will see violence and the intense depiction of violence and just be like, yeah, of course, this is the most amazing game of the century, game of the generation that I've ever seen, because there is a little bit of violence and the characters seem upset about it. But I really hope that people will look at this in its whole holistic form and feel a little bit of the fatigue that I think we're going to feel from a game like this. As always, I could be 100% wrong and deeply full of shit. I could be the one that is up that butthole. So, if you saw this and don't feel it all the same way, I really would like to know a little bit more. I want to have a little bit more of a dialogue here. This is the first time I've done something like this with a live stream and saving it in this way for a really, really long time. I think I did it years ago. This is unfortunately the face of VGS, Video Game Sophistry. I'm going to be doing a few more of these just to see if there is any purchase for it. And if there is anything that you want to know about The Last of Us Part 2, your thoughts on it, what you saw, what you hope the game will be, I want to talk about it, because later this week, I did a bigger deep dive into, unfortunately, some of the labor issues that are at Naughty Dog behind the game. And it's going to be out on our podcast here in the next couple of days. So please check it out.